Hello everyone and welcome back to the My Football Writer YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking through what went on this morning. Johannes HOFF had his first press conference as the new Norwich City manager. He said some very intriguing things, all for the right reasons. There was nothing really that alarmed myself or who I'm with today. For the first time, it's just two people on video. I'm of course joined by Jack Wright, also known as NCFC Payne on Twitter, and you look at him, he's in a beautiful attire. He's got the summer vibes on. Look at him dancing away. He absolutely loves it. He's ready for pre-season friendlies with Stevenage and Northampton, and even one as well confirmed today, St Pauli at Carrow Road. That should be a good one, hopefully. I believe they were promoted or they got the promotion relegation playoff in Bundesliga 2. But anyway, back to the main point. Johannes HOFF and Ben Knapper today had a press conference at the media area at Carrow Road, I believe. So, of course, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Jack, straight in, what did you make of it? You know, what's been going on for you the last few days? Of course, today being Friday, we're going to record the weekly podcast in a couple of days. So we'll do another bit of a catch up then. But how have you been the last few days? And now is the excitement building now that you've seen Thorup talk to the press?
I don't know why two pretty bland guys sitting behind a table and talking pretty monotonely about some football that they hope to play. I don't know how that has got me so excited, but it just has. It feels like, you know, like a notebook has finished and we're on to a new one. We're not even in the same book and on a new page. We're on a completely different book. You know, it feels like, the sporting director has finally got the man that he wants, has finally, got his, at least, the first step in his long-term vision played out. So yeah, it feels refreshing. It feels hopeful, but that's never a good sign, is it? That's never. I've been in this game far too long to fall for, silly traps of, watching, an interview with the new manager saying he's going to play beautiful passing football only for us to, finish 8th. It's so easy to fall in love and feel positive, but why shouldn't we, at least get a little bit giddy? We need something to keep us going until, the first couple of weeks of August.
Yeah, no, of course we do. And as well, with you having done a video of ranking all the NCFC managers, it will be very interesting if you ever do revisit that, where Johannes HOFF will rank. Of course, no one can say anything right now. You've just said that all there. We're just going off what has been said in interviews and what communication has been given to the press. Except the one thing that really is gunning for Knapper and Thorup is the fact that, of course, Knapper said, oh, well, he was always my first target, but it does genuinely seem that very much was the case. This seems like an appointment that was going to be made a few months ago, regardless of what was going on in the regular season with David Wagner at the time. I know that Ben Knapper did bring that up slightly during the press conference and touched on the topic of David Wagner, but of course, Thorup is the main event. He's the big attraction. And it will really be interesting, of course, some pre-season friendlies. I'd like to get your sort of thoughts on the quality of teams. I know everyone, of course, it's pre-season. You can't base it off of everything. What was it? Was it 2 seasons ago? We beat Marseille in pre-season 2-0, played them off the pitch, and then we finished 13th in the championship. So you can never base it off what you see in pre-season. But of course, with the new one of St Pauli today, there's quite a few interesting fixtures, isn't there? Especially, well, the one that springs to my head is the fact we're playing Club Bruges, the Belgian champion. So really, there's some good ones in there, isn't there? And they should be good tests, especially from when you want to build up a style of play, because you want to do it. Of course, you want that mix. You want to have easy teams where you can learn it properly and you haven't got to worry too much about quality of opposition. But then, of course, you have to make that practice perfect to use the cliche, really. But There's no harder games than, arguably on paper, Club Bruges and the other Belgian team were playing Standard Liège. So what do you think of those, just to sort of touch on them quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great day out for any of the fans going over to Bruges. I mean, what what a beautiful city it is. It's not quite as good as the fine city, but it is exceptional. It'll be a great day out. I think obviously I presume they'll be playing Champions League football. Club Brugge, I think they automatically qualify, or at least qualify to qualify. I mean, I even remember back to, I think it was 2014 when we beat Nice in a friendly, who then in the next game went on to beat Barcelona. So that's it. You can quote me on that. So by that logic, in 2014 we were statistically better than Barcelona, which is why you really shouldn't read into friendlies that much. And I think appointing Thorpe early so that he can, instill his style of play early, so that he can get an idea of who he wants early. He can get an idea of who he doesn't want early. It will be, like we touched on in the pod, it will be a question mark over some of those senior veterans in the team. But he touched on it in his presser today that his captain at Nordirland was 35. So I wouldn't expect all of the old guard to be cleared out. As we spoke about, we can't just clear them out. We can try and release them or try and sell them, but there will need to be a mix of experience, a mix of used products. We got used products in abundance, really. But a good mix of, in terms of pre-season, winnable games against Stevenage and Northampton, and then some real tests over in Belgium. And that St. Pauli game, that's going to be such a great atmosphere. What a game it's going to be. So excited for anything Norwich football wise. We won't touch on England at all, but we might do on Sunday. Who knows? All I will say is that Johannes is probably the most popular Dane in all of Norfolk. Maybe tied with Lungi, but at the moment, everything is positive, and I think if anything, the way that this season PR wise has gone very well, like you said about the appointment, I think it was good that we had little news stories dribbling through about I think it was Jensen was one of the candidates, and obviously everyone's meme friendly Will Still. It was positive to know that we were exploring our options and not just going headfirst into whatever appointment we could. On the flip side, it's good that we've appointed early, unlike Sunderland, who seem to be taking about 3 years to find a coach. Like I said, it's great that we've got someone in early, someone who has, a clear vision. Exciting.
No, completely. And you touched on quite a few things that Thorpe actually did touch on himself in his press conference. You spoke instantly about the older heads and the squad that's already there, and of course the talent we know it can possess. That was a big thing from Thorpe in what he was saying towards the media, especially about the older heads, as you were talking about. It doesn't seem like that we're going to be seeing a lot of them being chucked out the door, despite what Ben Knapper was saying earlier in the season about we need the average age of the squad down. That, of course, can still happen. Thorpe himself has said probably what all the fans wanted to hear in terms of, it's his job to keep looking for players to bring in, players that will fit his system. Even Knapper said it, and he said, well, I should be out of a job if I'm not doing this. Or it was along the lines of, realistically, he knows what his job is and he knows the expectations that are there. They both know what the fans will want. And of course, that's something that we would like to believe they're going to address. It does seem like those two are speaking the truth, which is, of course, so refreshing to see. Not just, even in terms of just a manager, and it's good to see that there's that really the excitement is shared by those at the club as well, the higher ups like Ben Knapper. Of course, a new manager is always going to be excited about what he's going to do, but it helps, us too as fans, and any Norwich fan is going to be very excited at the moment. But just going back to those older heads, Thorup himself said that the team needs a balance, really, of the younger lads who are going to come in. He said himself, and we know, from him working at Norgeland, that youth products are going to be a big feature. That's pretty much the entire philosophy at that team. And it really should be with us, because there's been so many players who have come up instantly. Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis, Ben Godfrey. I could go on and I could do a whole video just talking to this camera on my phone about how many youth players have come up over the years. But it's very exciting, isn't it? As you've already said. And that's a word I feel like is going to be chucked around everyone associated with Norwich City for the next few weeks. But yeah, so doesn't seem like we're going to be youth overload, and it's going to be a case of, you can't win anything with kids, and we end up doing God knows what with all our academy boys. But it's very good to see as well, I think, personally, from Thorup, that he's identified that. He knows that there's older players who realistically could be thinking their time is up, but really that's maybe just keeping the squad happy, albeit he's not met with them yet. But of course, I know you already touched on it there, but what do you think personally? Is that something you would like to see? Would you still like to see experienced players like Duffy and Barnes be used in this team, or are you rather stack that off, get the younger lads in who will play with pure passion and a fire in their belly during games, and they'll go for it because realistically they need to prove their points?
Yeah, you've got to have a mixture. You really do. Especially in the Championship, you do need experienced heads. Obviously, I think when we look at the youth talent that we have, I think it's always very easy for us to, like you said, look back at the big names that we've developed over the years and think they will slot into the team and they will be instantly amazing and we will win the league. It's worked for some. It definitely hasn't worked for others. Johnny Rowe is a great example of someone who came in, for his full first team season, proper game one, and took the game by the scruff of the neck. There's then expectations that will be the same for Kamara. It's highly likely that he will have a great season, obviously injury dependent. I'm thinking just about transfer strategy. If I think back to the seasons where Norwich City have been most successful, it's where we've collected a group of players who maybe have had previous failed successes in their career and they've come to Norwich for maybe a second chance or a first chance. Basically, players that have come to Norwich as an upgrade. The times that we have failed, in my opinion, is when we have had players that have necessarily downgraded to Norwich. So you're talking, Ricky van Wolfswinkel going from the Champions League to, the Premier League. Obviously, players like Ozan Kabak, who was at Liverpool a season before and then was at Norwich. It's a huge culture change. But again, flip side, when we went up with Lambert, we signed Pilkington from Huddersfield. We signed Elliot Bennett from Brighton. We signed Steve Morrison from, I want to say, either Leeds or Millwall. And we collected a group of players that were happy to be part of the club of our size and were grateful to be here. Even the Farke season, Stiepermann, had his time at Dortmund and didn't succeed. Vrancic, the same. Emi Buendia was just, on the cusp and was ready for a big opportunity. And it's all, having that collective group of players who want the same ambition, which is to come to a big club and to make that big club even bigger. So that's just my sort of idea of it. So, there is a very high likelihood that we will probably either sign lots of loan or release players from Arsenal or some Danish players. That, I would put good money on the fact that we sign someone who has been part of Arsenal's youth academy at some point in this summer. I would put very good money on that. There's obviously links to this left back Fresser. When he signs, I will know how to pronounce his name, and he will be my favourite player of all time. And this will be cut up embarrassingly. But him We obviously need a left back, so that would make sense. But yeah, in terms of youth, I think his comments were speaking to the fans. He was definitely saying all the right things, which after having previous managers that have in the past said one or two things that have not agreed with Norwich fans, if there's one thing we want is just to be positively reassured. What we don't want is a PR car crash early on with a manager. We want to get on with them, and we want to have some form of optimism. But again, the cliche, old-fashioned, boring approach is, it's all very well saying these lovely, nice things, but if it doesn't mean anything on the pitch, then people are still going to get angry. So again, it's really just made me excited to, like you say, see those pre-season games, see what we're all about, and actually, have the words, come to action.
Yeah, of course. There's no better case and point of seeing what's going to be utilised within the games than these pre-season ones. Of course, so I mentioned, of course, there's 6 weeks of training as well, and then of course the season does begin. It's going to be a very, very interesting one, regardless of what happens, whether Thorup kicks on, we absolutely fly through the championship, or maybe it goes completely the other way to as many would have expected, or well, I say expected, or rather would hope it would go, and we slump down the table. And for all we know, he could be gone within the first couple of months of his tenure. This really could go either way, and that is, of course, the great unpredictability of football. That's its really, for me, that's always its big selling point. You never know what will happen in this sport, and just it's really going to be an interesting time. Of course, there could be some players who may feel as if their time could be up at the club that Thorup uses, and maybe he likes a lot more than maybe the prior manager and David Wagner didn't like. I know that Adam Eder, he was the only named player, I believe. It was him and Kennaboa, who there was a talk of, well, at least to Kennaboa, of a contract that a lot of fans want signed. Of course, I know Will want that massively, being, of course, the main academy man, and he knows his talent much better than we do, really, because he covers him pretty much on a basis. But Adam Eder was the only first-team player whose name came up in conversation, and Thorup was full of praise. Straight away, he said he's a player who he wants to have a look at. He wants to see what he's all about, utilise him in his system. Again, could work brilliantly, and Eder could crack on and finally have the season which it looked like he could have had a few years ago. And of course, he's had plenty of injuries and his playing time is limited, alone to Celtic in the end. But this could be something that finally allows Adam Eder to kick on in the Norwich City first team, because it's been such a frustrating one for him over the last 5 years. But of course, Celtic are very interested. There's the rumour a few weeks ago of £6 million was the fee, that if Celtic were to pay it, Norwich wouldn't be too disappointed with that, and they may look to use that and cash in on Eder. But with a new manager in and a pre-season to use him, surely this is it now to really prove, is Adam Eder going to have a big future at Norwich City, because he's still young.
I think the opposite. I think this was a great advert to Celtic. I think this was, oh look, hype, we like him, he's definitely not worth 6, give us at least double that. It could go either way, it really could. It would take a lot for Eder to usurp Sargent. Obviously injury could be a definite one, but again, if Thorup is saying he's a great player, we want to have him, he's not going to say, oh yeah, we're going to sell him. He's going to give him, the utmost respect. But I think Knapper touched on it. One of Paddy's comments about trades, about selling players, that it is, I think his words were that it would be an inevitability or something along those lines. Basically, that's the way I interpreted it, which it really shouldn't be a shock as, a club of our size with our financial structure. but I think it's still, it makes you sick to your stomach thinking, what could happen. And again, we touched on it before. I think whilst it is inevitable that some talent will be sold, I just hope that it's negotiated well. Knapper's track record of transfers so far is Van Hooijdonk. So at the moment it's 0 out of 1, a 0% success rate. So it's only one transfer, so one swallow does not make a summer. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. And I think with Ida, just going back to him, will he want to bench warm or will he want to start? Obviously, going to Celtic, having a great time, kissing the badge after he scored. It's going to be it's going to be difficult to see him back in yellow. I think more sort of green and white rather than yellow.
Yeah, no, it does seem that way. He was just full of excitement whenever he was speaking to the press up there in Scotland, and he said after his last game, that was the Scottish Cup where he scored a last-minute winner, something very much which he made a knack of doing over the season. He did it a few times for us, and he did it as well for Celtic. So he's obviously a player who can, in big moments, clearly can step up. He's proven that. But I agree with you there. Of course, Celtic are by far a bigger club than Norwich. They're going to be playing Champions League football. Of course, if they get through qualifying rounds, we're going to be playing European football regardless, whether that ends up being Europa League or Conference League. So that instantly, that point, that selling point to him is going to be huge, because he couldn't ask for a bigger test in his career than to go back. Biggest stage that he's ever played on. There's no doubt about that. Of course, he gets to play an international tournament with Ireland, but this is the biggest time for him to really crack on. As I sort of mentioned earlier before you answered, this is his time really. And as you just alluded to there, is that going to be at Norwich City? Probably not. As you touched on there, Ben Knapper said that because of the model that this club has, we have got to sell. That is naturally what we've done for years, and that is how it's still going to be until the club have enough money to not do that anymore. Of course, that could be a long old time before that happens, because we don't know about what finances are not being used or the debts just yet. Of course, the financial records will be coming out next year about the season just gone, but it does seem inevitable that Adam Ida will be going. Of course, you mentioned there, Josh Sargent is not going to be dropped if he is fully fit. There is no doubt about that whatsoever with the form he has been in over the last season, and even half a season, this year especially. But it's interesting as well when you touched on the transfer strategy, looking at loans and free signings. Of course, you mentioned there Martin Fresa or Frese. If he does sign, then that would be all well and good. A player who Thorpe knows inside and out, having worked with him. But really, of course, there's that for me in terms of the transfers. Of course, I have no idea what the strategy is going to be. We will have to wait and see on that. But position-wise, of course, there's so many that need to be there. But it's just in terms of what's worrying for me in the transfers is we haven't really seen any holding midfielders being linked, and this has been Norwich's problem since Oliver Skipp left when he was on loan from Tottenham. It's been 5. What is it? No, not 5. It's been 3 or 4 years since Oliver Skipp last played for Norwich City, and apart from maybe in a 3-game spell, Matthias Norman is the only player who really has looked a fit replacement. But that could all change really. Is that concerning for you? Of course, that's not really something I've seen come up as of late, but is that something that you feel should be addressed really by Thorpe and Knapper? Because to me, it seems like that should be the one thing that he's screaming out at them.
Yeah, I mean, or we could just play Jack Stacey in the middle of the park. I'm not talking about England. Yeah, I agree. The question mark is, whether Kenny can actually play there. Kenny can play everywhere. It's just kind of knowing, what his best position is. it's the problem with that sort of versatile player. There is then, an argument very sort of quietly whispering in the corner of the room saying, hey, haven't we got a Danish defensive midfielder? Why don't we play him? Could this be Lungi's renaissance? Could it? I mean, can't rule it out. You can't rule it out. He's just signed a new contract. So, he's clearly wanted. He wouldn't have signed a contract if he was just going to sit on the bench. But again, fitness, Lungi. Yeah. You just got to, stay fit. Again, similarly, a defensive midfielder that can slot in at centre-back. I'd just like one that can just play in defensive midfield, and just stay there. Like, versatility is lovely and wonderful, but, maybe we can get Skip back on loan. He's clearly not favoured by Postecoglou. He might be on significant wages, but who knows? Maybe a new manager with a new vision can entice him. Obviously, he knows the city, and this time he can play in front of fans. So, But no, I agree. I think defensive midfield, I think that's the one position for a number of transfer windows that we've been screaming at our TVs and our phones, looking for a no circus from Paddy for, but there is no circus. But we can dream. Maybe we can scout some Danish defensive midfielders. Maybe Hoylmand, who scored against. I'm not talking about England. I'm not. Not talking about England.
Well, who knows? I'd be amazed if Sporting were to let him go, seeing as that was just his debut season, and he may or may not have scored. We're not going to talk. We're going to leave that for Sunday, because that's where we can talk about a lot more different things. Because we're gonna have to try and fill a bit more time in terms of what we can talk about, and that's nowhere near what we're going to be what we're focusing on right now with everything that's come out this morning. But as well, just the last sort of thing to really touch on was, in terms, Thorup was really, maybe as you expect from a manager. He talked about his style of play, and he did this even in his first club interview when the appointment was announced 2-3 weeks ago. There was the thing of he wants to control possession, and he's always looking to score the next goal. Now, that's something, of course, with David Wagner, who there was a big thing at times, and even Dean Smith. There was the whole of, I just want to win 1-0. I just want to win 1-0. I'm more than happy to let anything happen in the game as long as we win, and we can win 1-0, and that's fine. But it seems with Thorup, that's something that he doesn't want to happen. But just instantly, the first thing I was thinking in my head, and I saw on social media, and I couldn't help but laugh and agree with it really, after a whole pretty much half a season of fans in either end of Carrow Road wanting the ball pumped long rather than it knocked around the back, we now have a manager who has instantly said, I want to dominate possession. I want to dominate control of the ball. I think it could be at the start. I think the River End and Barclay End might be tearing their hair out because there's not going to be any hoofing it up the pitch. But of course, if it works and it's in full fluidity, we could be absolutely just playing teams off the park, knocking it through them, score a goal, do it all over again and over again. Of course, I might be getting a bit carried away. It's hard not to when you've got this much excitement around the team you support. But what do you think of that in terms of an ideology? Of course, the modern game, since Guardiola has revolutionised it 10 years ago, and even a little bit before that with the tiki-taka style of play, or as some pundits call it, tippy-tappy football. But that does seem like something Norwich are going to be looking to utilise. But that's just how the modern game is now, isn't it? You have to, if you're not dominating possession and playing fluid football, arguably, with how it's gone in the recent years, you're not playing it right.
Yeah, I think you look at the best seasons that Norwich have had, obviously, that German guy that liked playing tippy-tappy football took a season to bed in. Was it a particularly sour season? I don't think it was. I think Madders obviously lit it up and was something to entertain us whilst we were sometimes getting thumped. when it works, it really does entertain. I think it obviously can frustrate, and there's obviously a fraternity of fans that would much rather prefer an Allardyce Deitch style hoof it forward and, you know, bully the opposition. I think in a league like the Championship, where you've got, you know, that conflicting style of play, if you're going to dominate the ball, teams are, you know, going to tactically set up to either exploit you from set pieces or exploit you on the counter attack. So whether it's going to be easy to read, you know, will be a huge thing. But I think as much as kind of a passing nice style of play, you know, I'd be interested to see something that's more kind of fluid, something that's a little bit more flexible. I think the main critique of Farke that is echoed, you know, across time is that he didn't have a plan B. He did plan A until plan A worked. You know, being able to actually tactically assess the game, change it, but that will depend on, you know, what manpower we have available, you know, whether we have the options on the bench in order to actually, you know, tactically change it. And I think, you know, I'm obviously not a coach, I'm not a manager, I have no idea about the tactical insight, but again, as I said on the first pod, this is a man who has managed a 50% win rate in Denmark. And that, you know, you can look into all your stats of XG and X saves and all of that stuff. You know, he understands, you know, the way to get to the fans' hearts, which is entertaining, fast-flowing football with young players. That's, as Norwich fans, what we're used to. You might argue, oh, that's the same for a lot of fans, but I think it does hark back to some of our best years, to some of our best memories. So, yeah, and I think him instantly saying in his pressers, yes, this is what I want to do, this is how we're going to do it. It will just be interesting if he does actually do it, because if he doesn't, that's a huge, like, Uno reverse card. That is clever. But yeah, again, just to say, excited, man. I'm so excited. I didn't know this guy at all, you know, 6 weeks ago, and now, you know, I might get him tattooed. I'm not going to get him tattooed. But...
well, who knows? So then, Mr. Thorup, no pressure. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Let's see how he will cope. Of course, there is a whole pre-season to worry about where judgments should be limited. Let's not get too carried away, albeit I'm saying that now that of course, me and Jack have said absolutely everything to get carried, exactly as Jack does there. Just calm it down. Let's all compose ourselves. But let's just see what happens over this pre-season. Let's see whether we might take some time to implement this style, or for all we know, as Thorup said, he's identified there's players there in the squad that look good within the style he wants to play. Ben Knapper even backed that up himself. So instantly, it all seems very good on that front. These two seem very connected with one another. They match each other's visions, which you instantly want, considering Knapper is the brand new sporting director. He needed someone who was going to agree with his ideas. Otherwise, why even bother appointing the guy? But Thorup is here. Let's hope that it all pays off. Pre-season's still to come. So much that could make this look brilliant. It could make it look dross. That is, as I said earlier, unpredictability. No one knows what's going to happen. Of course, fixtures are released very soon. And, well, I know it's not the podcast, but I'm going to just do a quick fire question to you, Jack. Who do you want first day of the season?
Oxford at home.
Okay, the return of Josh Murphy. So we'll have to see how that goes. Well, if you see that question be repeated on the podcast on Sunday, then clearly I've left a lasting impression. And let's hope Johannes Thorup does the same. Still, as I say, I'm going to sound like a broken record. There's a long time to go until now, and even until the start of the season, let alone the midway and end point. But we'll be seeing very soon how that's all going to go down. thank you for watching this video, and make sure that you keep your eyes and ears out for the next episode of the MFW podcast. We're going to be recording that over the weekend. Hopefully that will be with you late on Sunday. We're going to try our hardest, but of course we'll just see what happens with that one. Of course, that'll be up here on the YouTube channel, it'll be up on Spotify as well. We hope you enjoyed this one. Let us know your thoughts about the words of Johannes Hoff and Ben Knapper in our comments section below, or even on the comments of the article that I posted for this website on the My Football Writer website. I've been Freddie Humphrey Wakefield. He's been Jack Wright, and we'll see you for the next one. It's goodbye for now, and see you very soon.